More moorings, footbridge construction, and work at Millway on this episode of Barnstable Today. It's Wednesday, August 29th, 2012. I'm Sarah Colvin. The Conservation Commission gives the nod to an Eagle Scout project. Red Mansfield of the Barnstable Land Trust and Scout Derek Sullivan were before the Concom this Tuesday, asking for permission to build a 14-foot handicap-compliant footbridge along a path in Centerville.
But you can't walk the entire loop because there's a ditch. And so Derek came forward to offer to build a bridge.
Abutter Bob Granquist, who lives on nearby Birchill Road, had some questions for the Commission and the Land Trust.
The edge of my property is probably 50 feet from this bridge. So I was curious as to, I guess, the intent of what this bridge is going to do and how much activity that it will encourage in the back of, which in a sense is my yard. And I'm not here in an adversarial position, but I am curious about what the, what your vision is for this.
Our interest is simply to create a loop for a walking path for pedestrians. When you come in the entrance of the property,
Right.
It's a grassed road that leads up to the town property in the back.
Yeah.
If you go to the right, you encounter this ditch.
Yeah.
On the other side of the ditch, there's a severely overgrown, very narrow path that continues on the
On
eastern
the
side.
inside towards the pond.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's been overgrown. I mean, I've been there for 10 years. So
Sure.
I've walked it
Please,
many times. So I'm-
gentlemen, please direct your comments to the commission.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm
All
sorry.
right.
Yeah.
And so we intend to keep the path open. Is basically all we're interested in, is a footpath.
The Commission asked about the types of lumber that would be used in the project.
We have met with the Home Depot about getting pressure-treated lumber that is suitable for ground contact. We have mapped out the prices, and we have the funds raised to purchase such lumber and move forward.
And I assume it's probably not CCA now, it's
ACQ.
ACQ treated. It doesn't have the copper and the arsenic in it, like the old ACE, it's ACQ.
Not anymore, no.
The Commission had some final comments for Mr. Granquist.
You're an abutter, so you're aware of the potential
I've seen
safety
that.
issues
Yeah.
of,
No,
what this, ditch represents to someone maybe elderly who might be wanting to walk.
No, I
And
so, yeah.
the bridge has been described as providing handrails and providing handicapped access.
Yeah.
So, as a matter of safety, as a matter of, improved access for passive recreation, and, I think it's a great project, and, I applaud it.
The Commission approved that project. The State Department of Fish and Game, along with the town of Barnstable, are hoping to replace 9 floats at Millway. That project was also before the Conservation Commission this week. Doug Cameron of the Department of Fish and Game explains.
It's on Commonwealth land, and the facility is managed by the town of Barnstable. It's the Bliss Point boat ramp at the mouth of Barnstable Inner Harbor. What we're proposing to do is replace 9 timber piles that are currently existing. The primary reason for the replacement is in last fall and this spring, we had 2 occasions where the floats floated up over the top of the piles and resulted in damage to our piles, but not to surrounding properties. And part of this replacement project includes the raising of the top elevation of the piles to prevent that from happening in future storm events.
Questions?
Yeah, I was confused. So you're pulling out the old pilings or adding on to them?
Pulling them out
Pulling
and
them out.
replacing them with new piles.
And the
Those
new piles would be what, 40 footers?
They vary in length because the slope of the shoreline varies as well. So the top of the pile will be elevation 20. Currently, they're at elevation 16.
Okay, so yeah, that's, most of them now, those 20 footers, they usually put 20 in and 20 out.
Yeah, and
Standard. And how are you gonna do this? Don't we normally require, Rob, certain procedures to be followed, like jetted in the first little bit to get them set, or? And then driven after that, so.
I can't speak for every contractor in the world, but lots of them use a vibratory hammer, and no jetting was required.
Okay.
So that will be probably most likely a means of construction.
Yeah. I know that what George Gilmore generally does is he'll jet in just to get it set, and then he'll.
But this is, guess is that you're putting them in the same holes.
Putting them in the same holes, and they have
Yeah.
to line up with the pile hoops for the floating
Right,
dock
yeah,
system.
right, so you already got a hole to start it with.
The false work is essentially the floating docks.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Hurricane Bob saw a lot of floats, come up over, pilings, and
That's a mess.
yeah, and it was a real mess. So, I mean, you're putting in adequate pilings to anticipate, a pretty good storm surge from a major hurricane.
Well, not so much a major hurricane, but a significant storm event. We've had last fall, and again this spring, we had two storms that resulted in the floats coming off. And that facility was built in 1988 with never a problem. So, I think the elevation 20 is a substantial elevation, and, we're not designing for 100-year storm events or hurricanes.
That project was also approved. Names are being added to several mooring wait lists in town. At this week's Waterways Committee meeting, mooring officer Joe Gibbs talked about how the town was able to increase mooring availability in several areas.
We're doing two things. We're breaking Katuitt up. Currently, Katuitt is our largest mooring field. And as we've gone through trying to offer folks moorings, the vast majority want to be near the Katuitt Town Dock and the Ropes Beach area. So we're breaking out what we call the Cordwood Oyster Company area. We sent a letter out to all the folks, I think it was Friday, basically saying if you're interested in the Cordwood Oyster Company area, they would, based on where they are now on the list, we can move them to that list. Eric had done that many years ago with Tim's Cove. Tim's Cove was part of that whole Katuitt area. Offered the folks, do you want to go on to it? Anybody that was interested went over and became the first folks of that. So hopefully for management, we'll be able to move the moorings a lot faster. I think we'd gone 60 people into the list out of Katuitt last year. I think we only had one person that took that Cordwood area. So hopefully that'll speed up the process a little bit and try to get some more people out there. The other part of that is in West Bay. We had talked about putting a small, kind of a test mooring area of, we're not quite sure, it might start out as like 20 boats or so, small, shallow draft boats out in the flat areas, be out near where Townie Horner's house used to be. I can show that to you if you want. There is some sailing stuff that goes on out there, so we don't want to crowd it too much, but we thought it was an opportunity to give it a shot. And that would be basically the Weano Yacht Club has these floats right here that they have their floats on it. So this whole area right here is all very, very shallow. So we're looking at basically creating down in this area here, so they still have an area to get to their floats and still do what they're doing. So this area down here is to create a shallow draft mooring area. We did put a restriction on that of 18.0 feet or less and 16 inches of draft or less. So anybody that gets on those lists, they know that's what it is. We did, because that whole area for say is considered, we've always considered the whole thing as West Bay. Eel River basically chops off over here, even though we never filled it before. We did send a letter to the West Bay folks that were on the list and said, if you are interested, we want to give you, first shot at this. However, it is going to be two separate, it's going to be separate lists like Katuitt. It now will be two. So there wouldn't be any jumping between the two, but we wanted to give the people that were there. And I think most of the folks are probably looking for a bigger shot, but if they have a small boat, it's not probably going to be the most desirable just because the landing is up here.
Long way to go.
It is a long way. But again, we have some area that we're trying to accommodate some folks if we can.
You can view the entire presentation online at town.barnstable.ma.us. Contact the Marine and Environmental Affairs Division for details regarding mooring wait lists. Entries are being accepted now through Friday, September 21st. The lottery will take place at Town Hall on Thursday, September 27th. With Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Colvin.